Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going on a journey into ancient times, to the middle of the 6th century BC, to meet one of history's most remarkable rulers, Cyrus the Great. We'll explore how he and his people, the Persians, went from being relatively minor players on the Iranian plateau to founding and ruling one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. Let's dive in. Picture this. We are in the region we now call Iran. Among the many tribes, one people known as the Persians lived on the southwestern Iranian plateau, around what is today Fars Persis. Over time they'd been under the sway of larger powers, first the Elamites, then the mighty Assyrians, and then the Medes. The Medes, based in Ecbatana, modern Hamadan, were dominant in the region, and the Persians were in a somewhat subordinate position. But in the decades around 559 to 550 BC, something significant changed. Cyrus, born into the Persian royal family, succeeded his father Cambyses around 559 BC or thereabouts as ruler of the Persian territory of Anshan. The rise of Cyrus inherited a position of limited power, but he had ambition and smart strategy. Around 550 BC, he rebelled against his overlord, the Median king Astyages, and defeated him, thereby overthrowing the Medes and establishing the foundation of what would become the Achaemenid Empire. That victory was pivotal. Not only did it shift the balance of power in the region, but it also put the Persians under Cyrus in the driver's seat. Building an empire from that point onward, the expansion accelerated. Two of the major early conquests were Lydia, the rich western kingdom, and Anatolia, modern Turkey, ruled by the famous Croesus or Croesus. Cyrus moved westwards, confronted Lydia, and by 547 BC or thereabouts defeated or at least captured the king of Lydia and brought that territory into his growing domain, Babylon. Perhaps even more famous, Cyrus turned his attention south and west to the Neo-Babylonian Empire. In 539 BC he conquered Babylon. The important thing wasn't just the military victory, but how he treated the conquered city and its people. So by his death around 530 BC, Cyrus had built an empire stretching from the Aegean Sea in the west, through Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and out to the Indus Valley in the east. What made his success so remarkable? Let's look at the factors that propelled Cyrus' rise and held the empire together. 1. Smart alliances. Revolts and timing. Cyrus did not simply march in with brute force everywhere. In overthrowing the Medes, he exploited internal discontent and shifting loyalties among Median generals and aristocrats. By offering an alternative, he made conquest easier. 2. Governance and tolerance. After the conquests, instead of simply oppressing the local populations, Cyrus established a model of rulership that emphasized respect for local traditions, religions, and customs. This earned him loyalty and stability rather than endless rebellion. For example, when Babylon fell, Cyrus is recorded as restoring temples, returning sacred objects, and issuing what many modern scholars regard as an early form of human rights charter via the so-called Cyrus Silly. This policy of tolerance was somewhat revolutionary for its time and helped integrate a vast variety of peoples into the empire. 3. Administrative innovation. The satrapy system. Cyrus instituted a system of provincial governors, satraps, who managed the various lands, collected taxes, raised troops, and upheld order, and crucially, local traditions and populations were given a measure of autonomy so long as they acknowledged imperial authority. This balance between imperial control and local freedom reduced the risk of uprisings, while many of the refinements of this system came later under subsequent rulers. The foundation was laid strongly under Cyrus. 4. Reputation and legitimacy. Cyrus' reputation as both a conqueror and a just administrator spread far and wide. Greek, Babylonian, Jewish, and Persian sources all remark on his leadership, mercy, and legitimacy. Because the empire was presented not just as Persian-dominated but as a multi-ethnic, multi-religious system where people could prosper, that helped the empire hold together. Key moments and milestones. Let's highlight a few key chapters of his journey. Circa 550 BC, the overthrow of the Medes and foundation of the Persian Empire. Circa 547 BC, a defeat of Lydia. Expansion into Anatolia. 539 BC, fall of Babylon. This is huge. Babylon was once the center of the known world and had been the dominant power in Mesopotamia. With Babylon under Cyrus, the Persian Empire had truly become the dominant power in the region. Eastern campaigns, while less precisely recorded, Cyrus or his immediate successors also extended Persian influence eastwards toward the Indus River, solidifying the east flank of the empire. Why did so many people accept Persian rule? You might ask, when one empire conquers many peoples, why don't they all rebel? With Cyrus' system there were a number of elements. Local elites often retained status if they accepted Persian rule. They weren't necessarily crushed. The policies of tolerance meant that religions and cultural practices were not systematically destroyed, they were often preserved or restored. The administration allowed a decent quality of life, infrastructure, stability, and rule of law improved compared to many of the previous regimes. The message of the empire wasn't just, "You were conquered," but often, "You are now part of a larger order." All of that helped build an empire where loyalty and cooperation were possible, rather than pure oppression and revolt. End of the road for Cyrus and what his legacy was. Cyrus died around 530 BC. Some sources say 529 BC after a long reign, and left behind a massive empire. Exact details about his death are murky. Various ancient sources offer different accounts, some legendary. But whatever the exact circumstances, the empire he built endured. His policies, institutions, and the scale of his conquests meant that the Achaemenid Empire would go on to be one of the great powers of the ancient world, and his memory lived on. In modern times, Cyrus has been celebrated not just as a conqueror but as a model of enlightened rulership. He influenced Jewish history, for example, his allowing the exiles in Babylon to return, and was admired by Greeks and later Western thinkers. Why this matters today, you might think. This happened so long ago, why should I care? Here are a few reasons. The idea that an empire could be built not just by force but by inclusive governance is something we still recognize today. The way Cyrus balanced unity and diversity is very relevant in our own era of global connectivity and cultural pluralism. His example shows us that leadership rooted in legitimacy, respect, and vision can have powerful results. Understanding the foundations of big historical shifts can help us better appreciate how the modern world developed, from state structures, administration, cultural exchange, to how empires handle diversity. Putting it all together, so, in summary, a people who were once relatively marginal at the time, the Persians under the leadership of Cyrus the Great rose up and transformed the political map of the ancient Near East. Cyrus combined military skill, political savvy, and an unusually tolerant and inclusive approach to governance. His empire stretched from the Aegean Sea in the west to the Indus River in the east. He built institutions like the satrapy system and a model of rule that allowed for local autonomy, cultural pluralism, and above all, stability. His legacy resonated down the centuries in politics, culture, religion, and governance. Final thoughts: if you ever find yourself wandering the ruins of ancient Persia, say visiting the site of Pasargadae in Iran, where Cyrus' tomb is located, you're not just looking at stones. You're looking at a vision, the vision of a leader who believed that conquest could be combined with fairness, that empire could be built on more than fear, and that diverse peoples could live under one roof. His story invites us to reflect on leadership, diversity, and governance today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, feel free to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other ancient figures you'd like to explore. Until next time, keep curious and keep digging into the past, because it still speaks to us.